Hello friends, thank you for your time and thank you for being patient with us while we get everything set up. This video is part of a mini-series titled The Terra Preta Project. In this video, we'll be talking about composting, black gold. Today, an estimated 1/3 of all food produced around the world goes to waste. That is equal to a whopping 1.3 billion tons of food a year. But wasted food isn't just a social or humanitarian concern. It's an environmental one. When we waste food, we also waste all of the energy it takes to grow, harvest, transport, and package it. Furthermore, all of the unconsidered externalities such as pesticides and fertilizer use are polluting the soil, groundwater, watersheds, and the greater biosphere, with specific damage being done to the insectosphere. One study published in 2017 found that over the course of 27 years, ecosystems saw a 75% decline in total flying insect biomass in protected areas. You may remember a time when driving down country back roads and after a while your car's windshield would be covered in insects you hit along the way. Think about how seldom this happens now. When we waste food, the cost-benefit analysis tips the scale all the way to environmental cost with no benefit. If food makes it to the landfill, it decomposes and produces CO2 and methane, a greenhouse gas 25 times more effective at trapping heat in the atmosphere, leading to higher average global temperatures. There is some good news, however. Methane is much shorter lived in the atmosphere than carbon dioxide. Therefore, greatly reducing the world's methane emissions would be one giant leap for mankind in the right direction. One way to reduce your methane footprint is to eat less meat. Livestock is responsible for almost 15% of all human-made greenhouse gases, and 44% of those emissions are methane. Even substituting a couple of meat-centered meals per week makes a big difference. About 11% of all the greenhouse gas emissions that come from the food system could be reduced if we could stop wasting food. In the US alone, the production of wasted food generates the equivalent of 37 million cars worth of greenhouse gases. According to the United States EPA, yard trimmings and food residuals constitute 20 to 30% of the US municipal solid waste stream. That is a lot of waste to send to landfills when it could become beneficial, environmentally sound compost instead. And here we come to our point: composting. Composting is easy, and it is something you can start today. The compost building blocks can be broken up into two categories: greens and browns. The browns are considered carbon-rich materials, and the greens are considered nitrogen-rich materials. The browns are called browns because, well, they're typically brown. But this does not mean that all things considered browns are the color brown. Browns include things like dry leaves, straw and hay, shrub prunings, chopped twigs and branches, pine needles and cones, wood ash from untreated wood. A side note here, fresh wood ash that hasn't been treated with chemicals is a great source of potassium for your garden, but only in small amounts. Other browns include shredded paper. You want to avoid colored paper and ink. You want to also avoid glossy papers. Shredded cardboard. It will typically say on the cardboard if it is compostable. Eggshells and corn cobs and stalks. Now for the greens, these are things like fruits and vegetable scraps. Except for citrus peels, they do not seem to break down very well. Fresh grass clippings, and make sure you know where your grass clippings are coming from. Many people today get their yards sprayed with harmful chemicals, and so you want to be careful and avoid grass clippings from these areas if you are using your compost in food-producing gardens. Other greens are flowers, seaweed and kelp, chicken manure, coffee grounds and the unbleached coffee filters, tea leaves and compost-safe tea bags, hedge clippings, garden waste such as weeds and anything from the cleanup of a garden. Now, done properly, a compost heap should be warm to hot in the middle and should kill any seeds that make it into the compost heap. That being said, this is not always perfect, so be careful about putting invasive weeds and weed seeds in your compost because you may unknowingly transport those seeds to your garden. Your balance between greens and browns is crucial to achieving the best possible compost. Generally, a ratio of 3 or 4 parts browns to 1 part greens is great, but this is just a rough guide and will require you to keep an eye on your compost heap to see if it's working properly. Here are some ways to listen to what your compost is telling you. Not enough greens, and your compost pile may not heat up enough to properly work, and the compost pile will look dry when you're turning it. One notifier that your compost is too dry is that you may see ants making their homes here. Ants are beneficial to the composting process because they introduce fungi and microorganisms to the mix. However, ants are also a sign that your compost heap is too cool and dry. To fix this, simply add some greens. This increases the moisture and temperature and will make the area less favorable for ants. On the other hand, not enough browns and the compost pile will contain too much moisture. It will not be able to breathe properly and will begin to smell. The remedy? Easy. Turn more browns into the compost pile. Once you have a good balance, the center of the compost pile will be moist, but not too wet, and the fungus and microorganisms breaking down the material will be happy. The result? Beautiful, rich, dark compost, ready to close the loop of the cycle and put nutrients back into the earth. Lastly, there are some things you should absolutely avoid putting in your compost. These are things such as pet droppings, especially from dogs and cats, animal products such as meat, bones, butter, milk, and fish skins, any oils and fats, any plants, wood, or ashes from woods which have been treated with chemicals or pesticides, black walnut tree debris, invasive weeds that have gone to seed, and charcoal ash. For compost to do its thing, it can take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 years to break down into usable soil. This all depends on the sizes and types of things you are adding to your compost. And you can speed up this decomposition by turning your compost regularly. Turning it just means mixing it up and putting what was on the bottom on the top. And now you're ready. This is the first step in a critical transition from consumption to production. You can now use this rich compost as a wonderful additive to the soil of the plants you are growing, whether that be a pot, a raised bed, or several acres. When you begin to produce more of what you consume, you will grow a deeper connection with where and how your food comes to be. You will have a greater appreciation for the food you harvest because of all the work you put in, and you will be less likely to let it go to waste. Furthermore, if it does happen to go to waste, you can always compost it. And this concludes this segment titled Composting Black Gold, part of the mini-series The Terra Preta Project. As always, thanks for tuning in, and thank you for your time and patience. We'll see you next time, friends.